Welcome to American Black Journal. I'm Stephen Henderson. The Flint water crisis continues to be one of the biggest news stories here in Michigan and across the country. And now the contamination of the water is drawing accusations of environmental racism. The head of the NAACP paid a visit to the city last week, and he too questioned whether race and poverty are playing a role in the lead poisoning of Flint's water. According to the U.S. Census, the city's population is 57% black, and more than 41% of its residents live below the poverty line. Governor Snyder says there's no discrimination involved here, and last week he held a press conference outlining the next course of action in the water crisis.
I want to thank the mayor for her partnership and for hosting us here today at City Hall. This is about working together to address this issue. Last week in my State of the State, I gave history, I apologized, I talked about the background of all this. This is about continuing to take action though. Now is the time to act, to do things to help the people of Flint address the damage that's been done, both in the short term, the intermediate term, and the long term, and I'm committed to getting that done. And I appreciate the captain and all his efforts to go through the summary of a number of the facts that have taken place recently. Today, though, I'd also like to announce a series of other actions that are part of the process to get Flint on a more and more positive track each and every day. To begin with, I want to announce that we're going to increase both the executive office presence and the presence of the state of Michigan and the city of Flint in terms of physical presence. So we'll be opening an office here at the state office building headed by Rich Beard. Rich is with us today. Rich is a Flint native. So this place is near and dear to his heart. He's done tremendously good work previously in our administration, particularly in helping the city of Detroit. So he's going to be our point person here in Flint. Joining him will be a number of other people, including the Lieutenant Governor, spending a significant amount of time here. Again, I'll continue my presence here. Harvey Hollins has done good work for an extended period of time in this community, and that will continue. But you'll find many other departments bringing resources and people to bear on the ground here to do things to help the people of Flint. One of the activity centers for that will be the Flint Water Interagency Coordinating Council. I established that by executive order earlier. We're having our first meeting today. I will be present at that meeting. It's really a group of state officials with city officials, county officials, and outside experts. People including Mark Edwards, Dr. Mona Hana-Atisha, other experts. Lawrence Reynolds, I believe, is part of the team. So we've got a great group of experts. We're also inviting federal officials to participate. Again, this is like, let's bring all resources to the table so we can do this in a coordinated fashion. And that will be one of our primary instruments to move forward in terms of taking more action to help the citizens of Flint. In terms of other issues, one of the requests that we just announced yesterday that Nick Lyon will be speaking to, our Director of Health and Human Services, for making a request to the federal government to expand Medicaid to children under 21. Also look at how we can apply more lead abatement programs to help those children, and also looked at more community-based programs, medical home models on what we can do with children that may already have other forms of health care coverage. We're putting in a request to the Small Business Administration about how we can look at low-interest loans and things to help the business owners of Flint get through this difficult time and then hopefully have an opportunity to have their business grow and do better in the city of Flint. With respect to the Flint Water Task Force, a group I established back in October of last year, an independent group to give recommendations, to look at the background and history of this whole event and talk about lessons learned. In a couple of other occasions, they'd made recommendations. We followed up on those promptly. They gave me a letter last week. I'm responding to that letter in terms of yesterday or today. My response is going out, and I appreciate the recommendations. We'll be incorporating those, and Director Cray will be talking about that in terms of how we're incorporating those recommendations to look at the question of water quality and water safety. We'll establish a separate group of independent experts to work with us on the question of how do we get the water turned back on at the tap so it can be safe and clear, and what testing should be involved in that process to get to that point. In addition, I want to thank the Michigan Council of Foundations. They've provided some grant resources to help the city in terms of Mark Edwards. So there's a number of steps we're taking, but this is just the beginning. This is not the end of the process at all. So I'm pleased to say the Senate should be taking up the $28 million supplemental request for additional resources in Flint today and tomorrow in some fashion. The House passed it very quickly and with 106-0 as the vote last week. So progress is happening there, but this is the start of a longer-term process to make sure we are committed to Flint. So if you do not look at this press conference as the end of something, this is just, again, another stopping point to say more is getting done, we're going to keep doing more, and we're going to keep committed to the people of Flint. With that, let me turn it over to the mayor. Mayor, thank you.
Thank you. I have just a few announcements that I want to make. First off is that Virginia Tech scientist Dr. Mark Edwards has been retained by the city of Flint to oversee all water testing done by the state and the federal government. He is fully independent. He will be reporting to me and is funded by private donations. Secondly, I have told the Governor Snyder that Flint residents should not have to pay for water they did not and are not using. Therefore, he has set aside $3 million in his supplemental budget request to legislators to address the issue. There's more work to be done once we have accurate numbers from the Flint Water Department, and we will revisit what is right for our citizens here in the city of Flint. I want everybody to know, I appreciate the federal government stepping up, but this does not replace the state stepping up and giving the funds for our residents to fix this issue. I'm going to have Mr. Craig step up. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. I'm Keith Cram, the Director of the Department of Environmental Quality. So I'd like to just take a couple minutes today to tell you what the Department of Environmental Quality has been up to. First, we do work in lockstep with our federal partners. So there's a weekly conference call actually between the Director and the Interim Regional Administrator to make sure that we are on the same page. We're actually in the homes with EPA and HHS for that matter this past weekend, looking at water quality, water parameters, and making sure that that is right. Thirdly, the water treatment plant and their distribution system, they're doing weekly sampling for water quality parameters and lead. Next, we actually have a 5-point plan relative to water and water testing. As you know, we have residential testing that's occurring right now. There's 2,577 samples that have been sent in. They're not statistically valid, but we can say that things are trending better. 160 of those samples were above 15 parts per billion. So the vast majority, 93.7%, were below 15 parts per billion. 85% were below 5 parts per billion. So we'll continue the residential testing. That's one. Two is we're doing the food service testing. So we're going into all the food service establishments and working with our friends at the Michigan Department of Ag and Rural Development and making sure that the water in those establishments meet standards, production standards, food safety standards. We're also doing the schools as we've announced before, 13 schools. We've been through those. And so we can expedite that, we're working with our friends at the Department of Licensing and Regulation, and we're just replacing fixtures. Then we'll go back in and test those. 4 is we're working with our friends at Health and Human Services, making sure that we're paying attention to any of the elevated blood levels and then looking at water as a source. And so then as we move down that road, and then 5th is we're in the process of establishing sentinel sites across the city that are geographically represented. And we'll do that in consort with a new committee that was just stood up so that we get the experts in the room so there's agreement. No longer is there a difference of opinion between those that actually identified this problem and those that were denying the problem. So we are on the same page, and we'll make sure we're on the same page. And we'll make sure that an interagency group looks at that, because there is no excuse. Flint residents deserve safe, high-quality drinking water, and that's a long-term commitment. So once we establish sentinel sites, we'll figure out to see if the increased phosphate additions to the water is actually putting down that protective barrier, and we'll do it on data. And we'll make sure the data is accurate, vetted, and transparent. And I should say that any homeowner that's put in a sample can go to michigan.gov Flint Water and get the results immediately. Upon the results, there's no longer a lag in that, so you can go online and get your results. And then lastly, as I'm working with EPA, There is the commitment to make sure as the city transfers to KWA that we get it right. And that's a thorough review of the system to make sure this never happens again. We'll make sure the engineers, the healthcare professionals, and the water quality specialists all sign off and agree to the end result.
In the weeks to come, American Black Journal will continue to bring you updates and interviews on the Flint water crisis and its impact on residents.